You can spend your whole life believing that silence keeps the peace. That if you stay quiet, avoid conflict, and smile politely, people will respect you. But I've learned that silence only feeds the ones who underestimate you. My name is Helen, and I've lived 58 years watching the world through the eyes of someone most people ignore. The woman who rides the bus to the supermarket, who wears the same coat every winter, who brings her own lunch to the park. To strangers, I am invisible. To my son, I am simple. And that suits me just fine. I've lived alone since my husband, Tom, passed away 15 years ago. He left me a heart full of memories and a dream that became my life's work, a small cleaning business. It started with just me, a mop, and a handful of keys. Every floor I scrubbed was a prayer, every room I left spotless a promise that I would survive. I built that business for 20 years quietly while people looked past me. And when I sold it, I walked away with more money than I could ever spend, but no one knew, not even my son, Ethan. He thought I'd retired on a small pension from a school job. He never asked, and I never corrected him. Because I didn't raise Ethan to measure worth by money, I raised him to measure it by kindness. Then one evening, my phone rang. "Mom," he said, "Clara's parents are in town. They'd like to meet you. We're having dinner Saturday at La Marquise." I froze. La Marquise, the kind of place where people don't order food, they experience it. The kind of place where napkins are thicker than your pride. "Oh, that's lovely," I said. "I'll be there," he hesitated. "Mom, maybe dress up a little, okay?" "Dress up a little." He said it softly like he didn't want it to sting. But it did. That tiny sentence told me he was worried. Worried that his plain old mother would embarrass him. That night, as I sat alone in my modest living room, I looked around, the faded couch, the old curtains, the quiet hum of the refrigerator. I smiled. If Clara's parents wanted to see a poor woman, maybe it was time to show them what they expected. Because sometimes, to reveal a person's true nature, you have to give them the illusion they crave. And so, I decided this Saturday I would go to La Marquise, not as the wealthy woman I had become, but as the humble cleaner they believed I still was. Saturday came faster than I expected. When I looked at my reflection in the mirror that evening, I barely recognized myself. I wore a plain gray cardigan, a skirt that had lost its shape years ago, and shoes that had walked through more life than most people could imagine. No jewelry, no perfume, just me, the woman the world never noticed. I tied my hair back, grabbed my old purse, and took the bus into the city. Outside the window, the skyline glittered like a promise meant for someone else. By the time I reached La Marquise, the sky was already dark and the restaurant glowed like a palace. Through the glass, I saw people laughing softly, champagne in hand, their confidence shining as brightly as the chandeliers above them. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. The maitre d' gave me a quick glance, polite but puzzled, before showing me to the far table by the window. And there they were, my son Ethan standing nervously beside a young woman I recognized from photos, and across from them, two people whose posture alone spoke of wealth, Clara's parents. Ethan's face froze when he saw me. "Mom, you came," he said with a strained smile. "Of course," I replied gently. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." Clara kissed my cheek, her expression tight and polite. Then her mother, Victoria, extended her manicured hand, eyes darting from my cardigan to my worn shoes. "So lovely to finally meet you," she said, voice sweet as syrup. Her husband, Harold, nodded stiffly. "A pleasure," he added. But the way his eyes slid past me said otherwise. We sat down. I could feel the weight of their gazes on every move I made. The waiter brought menus, heavy, gold-trimmed, filled with words in French that might as well have been another language. I smiled softly and pretended to study the page. "Do you need help choosing?" Victoria asked, her tone dripping with false kindness. "Yes, please," I said. "I've never been to a place like this." She smiled, that kind of smile that hides a laugh. "I'll order something simple for you," she said, closing my menu without waiting for an answer. As the night went on, they spoke mostly to each other about art galleries, business trips, new investments. Every sentence was a competition. Every glance a silent evaluation. Then came the moment that pierced through me. Victoria leaned forward and said sweetly, "Ethan, dear, your mother must be proud of you managing so well on your own. It can't be easy for her, living alone on a small income." We were actually talking about helping her a little financially. The table fell silent. Ethan's face flushed red. Mom doesn't need, oh, nonsense, Victoria interrupted, waving a jeweled hand. We insist, maybe just a few $100s a month so she doesn't struggle. I smiled faintly, though my heart sank. Thank you, I said softly. That's very generous of you. She leaned back, proud, sipping her wine as if she'd done a noble deed. And in that quiet moment, something inside me shifted. I realized that night wasn't about dinner. It was about dignity. And while they thought they were feeding a poor woman, they were feeding my resolve. Because what they didn't know was that their generosity would come with a price, the truth. For a while after that, I stayed quiet. The clinking of cutlery, the soft piano in the background, everything felt distant, muffled, like I was sitting inside a glass bubble. Victoria talked and laughed as if she hadn't just offered me charity. Harold nodded at everything she said, occasionally adding his own smug comments about how hard work only gets you so far without class. I stirred my coffee slowly, not out of anger but out of patience. You see, people like them expect you to react, to shout, to defend yourself, to prove you belong. But silence can be louder than pride. When the waiter brought the check, Victoria reached for her purse. No, no, I said gently. Please let me pay for my meal. Her painted eyebrows lifted. Oh, please, Helen, we insist. You've done enough just joining us. Let us take care of this. She smiled at me like I was a charity case. So I smiled back, the same way I used to smile at rude clients before I sent their invoices. Well, I said softly, reaching into my bag, I suppose it's only fair I contribute. After all, I do believe in paying my way. I pulled out my wallet, simple and old, and slid a black titanium card onto the table. The kind that doesn't have numbers printed on it. The kind that makes waiters stand a little straighter. The sound it made when it touched the table was small but sharp enough to cut the air in half. Victoria froze. Harold blinked. Ethan's mouth fell open. Mom, he whispered. I looked at him and smiled gently. You never asked what I did after your father passed, I said. You assumed I just cleaned classrooms forever. Victoria laughed awkwardly. Oh, I'm sure you did what you could, dear. I turned my gaze to her, calm, unshaken. For 20 years, I said, I built one of the largest facility companies in the city. We cleaned hospitals, airports, corporate towers, even this restaurant once upon a time. I paused. 3 years ago, I sold that company for $12 million. Silence. The only sound was the faint hum of the restaurant's music. Victoria's face drained of color. Harold straightened his tie, trying to hide his shock. Ethan looked as if he'd just seen his mother for the first time in his life. I didn't tell anyone, I continued quietly, because I never wanted people to treat me differently. But tonight, I needed to see something. I needed to see if wealth really defines kindness. And now I have my answer. I looked at Victoria. You offered me $500 to stop being a burden, I smiled. That's about what I used to give my janitors as a Christmas bonus. She swallowed hard, her voice trembling. Helen, I didn't mean… Oh, I know, I said softly, cutting her off. You didn't mean to say it out loud. The waiter returned just then and I nodded toward the check. Please put it on my card, I said. Consider it a gift for teaching me that manners can't be bought. As I stood, Ethan reached out. Mom, why didn't you tell me? I touched his cheek gently. Because, my son, the way people treat you when they think you have nothing tells you everything. And with that, I turned and walked out. The city air hit my face like freedom. For the first time that night, I breathed deeply, proudly, completely. I wasn't leaving that restaurant poorer. They were. The next morning, the city felt quieter than usual. I sat by the window with my coffee, watching the sunlight spill across my small garden. The same mug, the same view, but something inside me had changed. It wasn't anger, no, that had burned away the moment I left the restaurant. What I felt now was peace. The kind that only comes after you stop pretending you owe anyone an explanation. Still, a part of me couldn't shake Ethan's face from my mind, the look of shock, the guilt behind his eyes. I hadn't meant to embarrass him. I only wanted him to see, to truly see, that the world isn't divided between rich and poor, but between kind and cruel. By noon, my phone rang. Ethan. Mom, he said quietly, can I come by? Of course, I replied. When he arrived, he stood awkwardly by the doorway, holding a paper bag. I brought your favorite blueberry muffins, he said, almost shyly. I smiled. Come in, sweetheart. We sat in silence for a moment, just the sound of coffee pouring between us. He finally spoke. I didn't know about the company, about any of it. You never asked, I said gently. And I never thought you needed to, he nodded, staring at his hands. I'm sorry for how they treated you. I should have said something. I was just embarrassed, I finished for him. He looked up, eyes glassy. Maybe. I just wanted them to like you. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Oh, Ethan, I said softly. People like that don't like anyone. They just approve or disapprove based on what they see. And last night they saw what they wanted to see, a poor, harmless woman who didn't belong at their table. He shook his head. They had no right. Maybe not, I said, but it showed me something important. You can't control how others see you. You can only control whether their judgment changes who you are. He nodded slowly, and for the first time that day, he smiled faintly. Then his eyes softened. Clara wants to talk to you. She feels terrible. I sipped my coffee and looked out the window. Does she? She didn't say a word last night, he admitted. But she cried afterward, said she saw her parents differently for the first time. I didn't answer. Part of me wanted to protect him, and part of me wasn't ready to see her just yet. She'll come by, he said finally. She wants to apologize. I nodded. When she does, I'll listen. After he left, I sat alone again, the same quiet house, the same ticking clock. But this time the silence felt different. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was honest. For years, I'd let people underestimate me. I'd let them assume I was small, fragile, forgettable. But last night reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Power doesn't come from money. It comes from knowing exactly who you are and never letting anyone make you feel less. It was 2 days before Clara showed up. The doorbell rang just as I was folding laundry, the morning light spilling softly across the room. When I opened the door, she was standing there, no makeup, no designer bag, no practiced smile. Just a young woman with red eyes and trembling hands. Helen, she whispered, I'm so sorry. I didn't say a word. I simply stepped aside and let her in. She sat at my kitchen table, fidgeting with her fingers, searching for words that didn't seem to come easily. I don't know where to begin, she said finally. That night, I just sat there while my parents talked to you like that. I wanted to stop them, but I froze. I didn't realize how cruel it sounded until I saw your face. And when you left, her voice cracked. I've never felt so ashamed. I poured her a cup of tea, placed it in front of her, and sat down quietly. Clara, I said softly, do you know what hurt me the most that night? She shook her head. It wasn't what your parents said. I've been judged before by richer, colder people. What hurt was seeing the look in your eyes, the silence. Because silence sometimes is louder than words. She nodded, tears spilling freely now. I was scared. Scared they'd turn on me, scared to make a scene. But after you left, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I saw how calm you were, how kind, even when they mocked you. I realized you weren't just Ethan's mother, you were someone they could never be. I smiled gently. We all grow up surrounded by voices that tell us what matters: money, image, reputation. But life has a funny way of showing us what really counts. She looked up at me, eyes shining. You changed something in me, Helen. I don't ever want to be like them. I don't want to judge people by what they wear or what they own. I want to be the kind of woman you are. For the first time, I reached across the table and took her hand. Then start with this, I said. Be kind when no one's watching, be humble even when it's hard. And love Ethan for who he is, not for how he fits into someone else's world. She nodded slowly, gripping my hand tight. After she left, I stood by the window again, watching her car disappear down the quiet street. The sun was setting, golden, forgiving, warm, and in that moment I realized something simple but powerful. Money can buy comfort, but it can't buy peace. Status can open doors, but it can't open hearts. In true dignity, the kind that lasts comes from grace, even when others show you none. That night, as I turned off the lights and let the house fall silent again, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not pride, not revenge. Just peace, because in the end, I didn't need to prove I was rich. I just needed to remind them and myself that kindness will always be the greatest wealth of all.